Seizure, it's a sudden burst of electricity in the neurons, the cells in our brains. Lots of people, when think about seizure, they think about those shaky movements that affect the entire body and people lose consciousness. But not all seizures are created equally or are the same. Different types of seizure might manifest in different ways. But despite that, we have different types of medications to treat seizure and suppress seizures, but we don't have any means to monitoring the effect of the treatment. Imagine if a person have a blood pressure, you give them medications, but you have the cuff to measure the blood pressure and see if the medication is working. It's not the same when it comes to seizure. My guest today lost their child due to seizure. Himanshu Misra wanted to create a company to help all seizure patients. Their device helps to monitor seizure activity in the brain and send this data to the patient and the physician and help physicians in making informed clinical decision on how to titrate seizure medications. I learned a lot during this episode, but the most important thing is the founder have a personal story. They lost their child due to seizure and they are on a mission. So without further ado, let's jump in and talk to Himanshu Misra. Making a difference in healthcare requires collaboration between researchers, startup founders, and policymakers. This is what Delta is about, hosting conversations with leaders on the path to serious innovation. Hello everyone, my name is Roupen, and I'm a physician on a journey to meet people who are making a delta in healthcare. All right, I'm so happy to have you here, Himanshu, today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
Can you tell me a bit about your journey? Why did you start Enlighten AI and what you guys specifically do?
Sure. So, Enlightened AI is a personal journey of mine. It's a story of love and a passion. My son had epilepsy, and I've experienced as a caregiver the challenges associated with managing seizures for the last 20 years. And 3 years ago, I lost him to epilepsy, and this is the reason why
For
I
your loss.
founded Enlightened AI to address unmet needs, which I felt that despite having the best neurologists in our area, at our disposal, there were still certain gaps in the way seizures are managed, and I wanted to do something to help alleviate that. And that's how Enlighten AI got founded. Uh,
Yeah, I'm sorry for your loss. That must be very
yeah,
difficult. But also, I think
yes.
that's your motivator, that's your passion, just to live the comfortable lifestyle and create something that help many.
Yes, absolutely. And this is the reason why we said that, we observed certain gaps in the way the neurologist, the patient, and the caregiver are unable to share details of a seizure when they happen, because when they happen, the neurologist is rarely there. And it's important for the neurologist to see the progression of symptoms of a patient between two clinical visits. And we wanted to figure out a way in which I would say wearables, devices, digital diaries can be used to ingest data to build certain insights and valuable information that could be shared with neurologists, and they could then create decisions based on the insights that they see, and of course encourage timely intervention.
Gotcha. Can you talk to me through the software or the device? Like, what is it? Is it a software? Is it a device and how it works? So let's go through it.
Yeah. Yes. So we are essentially a software platform. We don't make physical devices. However, from an FDA perspective, we are considered a software assisted medical device.
Mhm.
Having said that, our platform is about aggregating data, neurological indicators, and information that the neurologist feels is important for their patient and for their monitoring of the patient's symptoms. We bring in vitals information, actimetry data, neurological indicators like EEG data from and brain signal abnormalities through third-party devices, and then once the data comes in, our software aggregates the data, brings certain use cases actually that the neurologists feel are relevant, but then brings in algorithms to help discern certain insights so that the neurologist can take timely. It's either decisions that help the in the treatment process and to personalize things. So we are a data aggregation platform. We build insights, and the objective is to build a sort of an environment of participatory engagement, wherein the neurologist, the patient, slash caregiver are all involved in the process of helping provide information and also letting the neurologist know what is the best optimal treatment in lieu of quality of life balance.
Take me through the patient journey. So let's say I'm a patient and I find your device, your software on the Apple store or like the Google store for software. So I download it. Okay, so what's next? What should I do next?
Yeah. So our go-to market is slightly different. We are so a neurologist would prescribe the use of our product to
It's a more
a
digital
patient.
therapeutic.
Yes, exactly. So what we do is we once a patient has been diagnosed as being epileptic, that's where the neurologist advocates the use of our prescribes the use of our platform for the
Mhm.
therapeutic side of things. Because it's important that once a patient is out discharged from the hospital or the EMU, they need to be monitored on a continuous basis because the unpredictable natures of seizures is such that it can happen anytime, and in intensity, the frequency of seizures go up for no apparent reason. And it is important for the neurologist to be able to monitor that on a continuous basis.
Mhm.
So what would happen is the neurologist would prescribe the use of a platform.
Mhm.
The patient, and our platform has multiple things. They would download the digital diary element of the app from our Apple store, and we have a way in which we guide the clinician as well as the patient in terms of how they can onboard each patient in on a platform. They can integrate specific devices. They can select which devices are appropriate for the type of seizures they're having and or what they can tolerate. So that is the way the patient would know how and when to use our platform through the neurologist.
So once the patient like downloads the software, do they need like devices integrated with that software, like Apple Watch or another device or a third party device to send information to a platform?
Yes. So what would happen is, so the good thing is these devices are already integrated in our platform. So I would be wearing an Apple Watch here. I would maybe have some sort of a EEG wearable. It could be a headset. It could be, like a skull cap or something even smaller in form factor, whatever it is. We are device agnostic, data
Mhm.
hungry. So whatever the device we go for as we move ahead and we integrate into our platform, those integrations would be built in. There's nothing the patient has to do. What they would need to do is to be able to upload the software, and then the devices that we have which work for our platform would automatically be working in conjunction with our platform. The and once they start wearing the devices, the data comes in from the devices. It comes into the our handheld device, and the handheld device then I would say, then transmits all the neurological indicators, including the digital diaries that the patient or the caregiver has, and it goes into the cloud. So the cloud is where all the data comes in, the data that's ingested through these wearables and devices and the caregivers. And once it goes into the cloud, in the back end, that's where the magic happens in terms of looking at the trends, the seizure burden, looking at the way the seizure burden has increased, and therefore looks like an alert for the neurologist to look at the titration onset. And then at that point, the neurologist decides whether or not the titration onset is warranted. So that is the way we look at our platform being used in a very seamless way. The devices that we have integrated would work for the patient.
And what about the EEG part? So like Apple Watch, I understand that, Garmin Watch, I understand that, but like what
Mhm.
about the EEG transferring those brain waves? How does that work?
Yeah, so these device vendors that we are working with, they have APIs. The brain signals, the EEGs that we capture are actually ingested into our through our iPhone, for example, or a handheld device, and all of those data elements that are captured are
Mhm.
eventually then transmitted periodically to the cloud. So we using the Wi-Fi that a patient may have, and even if they are outside and they don't have Wi-Fi connectivity, it gets stored on the handheld device, and as soon as Wi-Fi connectivity is restored, it gets pushed to the cloud.
So the patient has to buy the EEG device that goes on the head and
Yeah.
transform this. And for how long, like the patient, because I don't anticipate patients wearing this like all day long.
Yes.
How long should they wear it to like see optimum like response or
Yes.
like some data that helps me as a physician?
So, patients who have drug-resistant epilepsy and who are at risk, they would be there's an incentive for them to wear it as long as they can tolerate it.
Gotcha.
Having said that, there are many devices, EEG headsets, EEG devices, which are getting smaller and smaller in terms of form factor.
Mhm.
They're better tolerated, and I understand that it's not possible for a patient to use those devices 24/7. But going
Mhm.
forward, there would be an increased usage and ability for them to tolerate the devices and those wearables. And I've seen that in the last couple of years, a major change in the way those devices have become so much more robust, smaller, and more, I would say, easily tolerated by patients of different types. So I anticipate that this trend would continue from the device vendors, and the patients would be more and more amenable to using those devices for longer duration of times. Having said that, I believe that the Apple Watch, for example, or the smartwatches can be used for a significant portion of the time of the day and night.
Yeah.
But there are certain devices, for example, that we are talking to and we are looking at a clinical study. They are FDA cleared for use during sleep. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
over time, you will see that uh, um, patients would be using those EEG devices and headsets for a longer duration, maybe 4, 5, 6 hours a day, and it would continue to increase. So that is the trend that we are looking at. Having said that, even if there are certain periods of time in which you're not able to capture EEG device data, we are still looking at bringing in actimetry data, heart rate variability, SpO2, and those are as well as caregiver notes, because all of those data points act as good surrogates. It's not one source of input that we are relying only on. And hopefully, as we get more data and more clinical evidence, our data models would be able to be smarter, so that even if we have, in absence of one data stream, we're still able to detect that was indeed a seizure. But if you have more data points, the corroboration, and it becomes a lot easier to say this was definitely a seizure, for
Gotcha.
example.
And so at this point, like what are the types of data that you are bringing to your software?
So our objective is to bring in, and of course, that's the reason why we have a very good advisory of neurologists,
Mhm.
epileptologists. But
Oh,
of
you have a
course,
great team. Kudos to you too also on that. Like I noticed you have a good clinical presence on your team. So that's a great job. Kudos to you for sure.
thank you, and I'm blessed actually. So a great team. We talk to neurologists, and some of our neurologists have specific areas of focus and interest, and they're specialists in those areas. For example, the interpretation of actimetry data in terms of how significantly bad that particular seizure was. In terms of how much longer it took the patient to recover from a seizure, for example, is a good surrogate information for us to kind of say that the seizure was extremely severe, for example. So
Mhm.
we have data points so in terms of the data points, we are looking at actimetry data, vitals information, also brain signals, EEG, EMG data, also muscular, I would say, abnormalities in some of the
Mhm.
contortions for some types of seizures, and of course, our diary. Our diary is also, we know it's not foolproof, but yes, it is. While it's a neurologist who understands the medical science the best, it is the caregiver or the family member who understands the patient the best. And when they see those seizures and they're witnessing that, it's important to see what triggers, what observations they had. Even if they are able to capture certain videos or clippings of that, it is very useful information for the neurologist to see that this is the type of convulsion or type of seizure that happened, because seeing is believing. And also, you can see the type of contortions that is difficult for a caregiver to describe. This seizure event is usually very stressful, and you're attending to the patient and you see things differently. And but you know what? We believe that the caregivers have a very significant role in being able to at least articulate from their perspective what their triggers were, what was happening in the day in the life of a patient preceding the seizure, in the minutes and hours before that. Uh, for whatever it's worth, we want to capture every possible source of information and put it in the system so that the neurologist can take a call, that because each patient has different triggers, different ways of responding, and the quality of life also is very important because the side effects are severe, and that
Mhm.
is important to see how
Mhm.
the patient is responding to medications as well.
Gotcha.
So all information, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So I was just saying, we try to capture whatever sources of information that the neurologist would feel is relevant for that particular patient.
Gotcha. So if the patient is wearing those devices, the EEG on the head and the Apple Watch or any other watch, and let's say they had a seizure, uh, so I assume the EEG is continuously monitoring the brain waves, and this information will be transmitted. So what I'm trying to get into is like, does the patient need to trigger, or the patient care provider to trigger the devices to record this episode, or this information is flowing continuously to your platform? I assume it's flowing continuously, but I just want to confirm, like, how is the flow from the patient to the platform?
Yeah, so it's seamless. So, for example, and it's so. Let me qualify this. From a device perspective, while a patient is seizing, the
Mhm.
EEG signals before and after and during the seizure are coming in
Mhm.
from the app, the watches, smartwatches, as well as from the EEG or devices, wearables or implanted devices. However, it is the external, I think, source of information that requires voluntary action is the caregiver, the digital diary. So they would then say, the caregiver would say, the patient just had a seizure, like
Mhm.
5 minutes ago, whatever. They need to
Mhm.
attend to the patient first. But if there is someone else there as well, they can, take a recording of the video. If that is a status epilepticus, for example, one seizure, one after the other, even capturing details of the video of any one representative seizure is very significant information for the neurologist to have. But having said that, it is the caregiver who would then record the details in terms of saying that this seizure started at around 8 8:05 p.m. It lasted for 5 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever they could visually see and discern. And then if there were any specific types of contortions, or did the patient have an emesis, or did the patient fall down, or was the patient aware between seizures, what possibly triggered it, all of that information is can be entered by the caregiver after the event, after they have attended to the patient. And once, and then it's a very elegant and a very simple interface for them to use pull down menus. But also they could do voice recording. They could actually they could all narrate and transcript, have a particular transcription, which then gets saved into our cloud, in our platform. And then of course we can pull out necessary information in terms of how bad that seizure was, what are the observations that the patient has from their logs, or even the audio clippings that we capture.
Thinking about it, like when it comes to chronic conditions, seizure is a chronic condition. And we do have several
Yeah.
ways of monitoring chronic conditions. So, for example, hypertension, we use blood pressure cuff. Diabetes, we use blood sugar monitors.
Hmm.
But we don't have lots when it comes to seizure. And I think this is very innovative in this space. Is like your software is just like a blood pressure cuff for hypertension. It's just keeping an eye on your seizures, so help us to titrate your medications. Um, I want to switch gears and go to the provider end. So I'm a provider. I'm a neurologist. I have this patient who was who have a seizure, right? And I asked him, okay, so jump on this platform and put your information, buy the Apple Health Watch or the Apple Watch, buy the EEG devices, and this will help me to monitor um, your condition. Okay, so as a neurologist, uh, do I have access to the patient data like all the time, only or only when they come and they bring their software, or is there a way like me and the patient, like I have my patient rosters, I can see them in front of me? Like, how does it work from my end as a provider?
Yeah. Yeah. So right now we are not at a stage where I can say this is how a patient neurologist is using our product, right? Because right now it was a clinical study. However, when we get into the real world, we will have an EMR integration, and that is the focus for us this year. So integrate our platform with the EMR system that they have.
Mhm.
So this way, the information from of the patient related information would also there'll be a bi-directional interoperability and connectivity between the EMR and our platform.
Mhm.
Having said that, so what will happen is you as a neurologist would say that you have recommended the use of our platform, the devices, whether it's an Apple Watch and or whichever EEG device is being used by the patient, and as the patient, as I walk away, and then your next clinical visit is still a year out, you would be seeing certain trends in terms of the seizure burden. So, for example, and of course, these are all personalized protocols. You would set
Mhm.
certain alerts and you'll personalize it. So, everything is about personalizing the alerts, the protocols, and what constitutes an alarm for that particular patient. So, you would
Mhm.
say that, if the heart rate and this and the number of seizures goes up, in the last week, a significant by goes up by a significant number, and the patient is seizing and turning blue or whatever. That is the time where you would get an alert, because we don't want the neurologists or the providers to get alerts every time or wake you up at 4 a.m. in the morning. There's nothing you can do when a seizure happens at that time. However, knowing the fact that the patient had a seizure last night and was ended up going to the ER and and get hospitalized or whatever is important for you to know, and you should be able to, and that's what our platform does. You should be able to go back 2 days ago or 3 days ago, or 5 weeks ago, and see what all happened at the time that that seizure happened. So the data is always accessible to you. So, and that is one thing that we allow you to do, the access to information of certain episodes and events that happened in the past, number
Mhm.
one. Number two is that as certain events are happening and getting logged in and our algorithm is looking at certain seizure burden trends week over week, an alert may come to you because you have said that if the certain no, the seizure burden increases by a certain amount, which is like 20% or 30%, and continues to do so, you want to know that
You
this
would want to
is
be alerted.
possibly the time for titration onset. Our focus of our platform, the reason why we exist, reason why we started Enlighten AI was not just to share information and have access to information, both sides, but essentially for you to guide the titration process, which is a trial and error process.
I
And
agree.
we wanted to make sure that there is a way in which our system, our platform can guide you to say that the titration is working, or with more data points that we have, I want to be able to predict. It's not there today. It's in a roadmap to predict which anti-seizure medication would have the highest rate of success in a titration for a given patient, given their seizure profile, the comorbidities, the co-medications, side effects, eventually genetics. But it's still something which is so. Therefore, instead of doing a trial and error, and realizing that those medications didn't work, and then it took you 5 iterations to realize which medication is the most appropriate in that titration. We want to reduce that period of guesswork, and maybe have a better way of predicting first time around what medication would have the highest rate of success. So that's what we are planning to do. Look at marrying the information associated with the patient profile and the medication to see what would make sense for this time around for the titration process.
Gotcha. And I want to circle back still like on the product. So what's
Yeah.
the business model like? So is it going to come out of the patient? Is it subscription model? I assume the patient is going to pay for the EEG and the Apple Watch. But like if they are on your platform, is it like subscription? Is it insurance? Is it pension? Like how does it work?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm very sensitive to the fact that I do not want the caregiver or the patient to pay for it. Because I know that they're already under so much of stress and
I agree.
distress and all of that, and there are a lot of costs. No matter, I mean, just significant costs in dealing with a patient who has drug-resistant epilepsy. So the way our business model is that we will be the neurologists would be using our platform, getting reimbursed through the insurance for the use of our platform. So, and there are certain codes that exist today, the remote patient monitoring, remote therapeutic monitoring codes, RTM codes, and those are the codes that can be used as as part of the reimbursement process. The devices, some of the devices, the EEG headsets that you're looking at, these are all FDA cleared devices. Those they also have CPT codes in which those devices can be procured. So the devices would be procured and it would be used by the neurologist and or the patient. And they would also be going through their own CPT code. I would say a reimbursement model. And that is something we will not be, it already exists. And these are things we are trying to figure out, because different device vendors have different ways in which they would get their commercialization model works. But from our perspective, every time there's a patient encounter, the neurologist would be, invoking a product, and there are CCM codes and RTM codes that they would be using. Starting next year, after a year or maybe 2 years, we would like to also invoke the value-based model. We don't have enough clinical evidence yet, but we need a couple of years of data and information to be able to have a clinical evidence to be able to confidently engage with neurology centers in some sort of a value-based model pricing. So that is something we are also looking at. And also, our platform is not just a decision support system, but offers immense data monetization opportunities in the sense that we are capturing information of patients, we are looking at the real world evidence, we are looking at their medication responses, side effects, and different types of seizures, different combinations of medications. And the pharma companies could definitely be using our platform in two different ways. One, in a very tactical way, use our platform as an objective monitoring system. In their own clinical studies, drug efficacy studies, they can use our platform to see how the patients are responding and so on. But in a strategic long-term perspective, the information that we bring, the patient data, patient information, responses to medication, titration, and so on, that information gives immense data monetization opportunities for pharma as well as biomedical companies. When you talk about titration, we are looking at changes in drugs and levels, but also changes in the settings of certain neurostimulation devices, because they also have certain settings, and those also require tweaking, or titration as the patient's seizure, I would say, health changes over time. So they would also see value in, for example, looking at how the information we have, the access to information that we allow, wherein they can detect how they can strategize how their medications should be targeting, what type of patient populations, with what type of seizures, who are on what type of other medications, so that they can look at better targeting patients, and they're looking at how they can compete with other pharma companies for products which are addressing similar seizure profiles as well. So that's further out, but the reason I bring this up is that opens up other revenue streams for us over, the long run.
No, I completely agree with you, which is like the revenues of stream are, and I really appreciate that you are thinking about the patient and the family of the patient because like paying for this out of pocket could be expensive. Um,
Yeah.
but now thinking about it, I think like the major issue is still like because like if the patient is not wearing the EEG headwear uh, and their heart rate increase, let's say they went for a run. This is going to be
Hmm.
the Apple Watch. How like the software will be able to differentiate if this is like if there is no EEG device on the head, how the software is going to be able to differentiate? Is this like a seizure or is it like exercising?
Yeah, so I think some of those things we are still working on in terms of, for example, there are other devices also where they reconcile the fact that the patient is actually exercising, and therefore the increase in heart rate or whatever is not attributed to a seizure. So we are
Gotcha.
looking at how we can personalize those things.
Mhm.
We have started researching how others have been doing it, and people have been doing it. So those are the things that and I would say at this stage we are not at that stage where of maturity in terms of building those models yet. But definitely, all of those use cases are extremely important for us to know what is indeed a true seizure and how is it that we do that. Do we, there are we have multiple options that we are evaluating. I mean, would there be a trigger or something that or a button that a patient would say, I'm exercising and turn it on, or there should be automatic ways in which it can be done. So we're still researching it, and it's a part of our next product release. So it's still
Gotcha.
work in progress. Yeah.
Gotcha. I want to shift gears toward you and understand more about you and about your advice for other tech entrepreneurs. So let's go back to the first day you started this company. You had the idea. Uh, what did you do next? What's the first thing that you do when you had the idea?
So, it is a very good question because when I went into this space, I had very little experience in digital health.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, I had built platforms for large enterprises. My professional experience enabled me to understand and relate to use cases, analytics, and how they're significant, how they can be deployed for real world use cases and building platforms and so on. However, what I did not know was would I integrate or how would I work with the FDA? Would my product be how would the FDA perceive our product? And I had very aspirational, ambitious aspirations. So I wanted to go run with some of the things, and we had it in our head that I would like to do this, but the how part was missing. It was not easy, and what in that situation, going through certain accelerator programs was very useful because
Mm-hmm.
they gave us good counsel in terms of InnoSphere Accelerator, Jumpstart, and I'm now part of IIT startups. Epilepsy Foundation has also got a very nice accelerator, and we are lucky to be a part of small group that has been selected for that. But having said that, going through experts such as the accelerator programs that was very useful. Onboarding team members and that were not just neurologists but also people from the regulatory side, people from the clinical evidence and CRO perspective. Working with CSSI Life Sciences, for example, onboarding a team of leaders who have done it, been there and done that. So my chief operating officer was a compliance chief at Google, Verily Life Sciences. He quit and he joined me, and he brings in a lot of a wealth of expertise. My CTO brings in expertise from having worked at EMR sites and built digital platforms. We have a data scientist who has done publications and understands how these type of like ailments, other neurological ailments, can be addressed. So team building is important, but I did not really fully understand the challenges of going into the healthcare space, not just from the regulatory aspects, but the type of clinical evidence that's needed, and how do you balance the product development, clinical evidence, regulatory requirements, and of course, data. So it's extremely important that we have our platform is scalable, it is modular architecture, but also the data, we do not want to compromise on the way we manage data, security and privacy issues. So that's where we got experts from this advisory as well as from our team to help us with that. So these are learnings. It's a different area. Healthcare is very, as you know, is very challenging, and it takes so much longer to get things done, which are required because FDA requires that level of scrutiny.
When it comes to building teams, like, do you have any advice for people who are in this space on how to build teams, how to choose your team players? What are the things that you look for before bringing anyone into your company?
It's the expertise and the technical or business acumen, but also it's the chemistry. The type, the pace at which we work, and as a startup versus a big company is different. The ability to gel well and work with the team members is very important amongst the team, because a lot of times what happens is wrong great people but wrong poor chemistry really hurts many startups. So that is extremely important, and it's not easy. It's not easy to get this thing right, and there are some players some team people who could be good early on but may not be the right people going forward. So it's a lot of, you have to match also their career aspirations, their ability to stay the course, and be patient, and it takes a while, but having the right team is extremely important. And of course, that's how a good product comes out. So there's no magic, magic science to it, but it really is that once you feel that you all work together, yeah, and there's a synergistic engagement and involvement with all team players. That's what's very important. They have to be passionate. They have to be driven to the cause, and also to know how to make things happen. The pace at which we need to build our product should match the pace at which the industry is able to consume and be receive this. You don't want to be ahead of of times. You want to make sure that you're building in things that people would see value in, yet you're at the cutting edge, but you're also not just, we want to productize. So what we wanted to do is, there's a lot of good science and good research happening, but we wanted to make sure it culminates in a product that can be put in the hands of a patient, a product that can be put in the hands of a neurologist and a caregiver. And that is why we wanted to make sure that we distill technology, we distill some of the things that make sense, and then make it a product and then roll it out as a product. So a team is very important for that.
Can you also share with me, like, so you've been in this for a while, what are the major mistakes you have done or things you wish you do differently if you're going to do this again?
So, I personally felt that I was a little optimistic in the way I felt the pace at which healthcare would adopt solutions, and I only to realize that it takes that much longer. And in hindsight, I believe it makes sense. It's extremely important because it's eventually the patient's health. We are looking at a lot of other things which are more which impact the quality of life and the health of a patient. So therefore, I understand why decision making is slow. But I did not realize that. I thought that some of the early, if I look at my early roadmaps, I had things happening like 2 years ago. And now I realize that it just takes a lot longer. You need more clinical evidence. You need to make sure that each and every functionality that we put in actually can be supported with solid data and solid information. So that's what I felt, and that was probably my naivety, not knowing how healthcare, as an entrepreneur, I did not know how it would work. but you learn new things every time, and there are small mistakes that you make, and you realize that those mistakes helped you become better. And that's what I felt. I felt that there was no specific mistake which I regret, because I think each of the challenges and obstacles we saw, that we felt, we came out stronger, because it helped us scrutinize and analyze things in a more comprehensive way. Because we thought it could be what we thought would be an easy slam dunk was actually something that required more, I would say, a thorough review and a comprehensive assessment, given the requirements of stringent requirements of healthcare. So, just my suggestion is, have a good team, but also recognize the fact that when you build, it takes a little longer than what you would have envisioned earlier if you're not coming from the healthcare space.
I completely agree with you. You just reminded me one of my interviews with Mr. Talal Ali Ahmad. He's the CEO of Predictive Healthcare, and one of the things he said in the interview is like he learned how to be a patient in healthcare as an entrepreneur, because he was
Yeah,
surprised. He's also an entrepreneur with a background in innovation outside of healthcare, and he was surprised how things
yeah.
are slow in healthcare. So I completely agree with you, and
Mm,
I share your same frustration. I share your same
mm.
frustration. Things are much slower in healthcare.
Yeah, and also the reimbursement models, the
Oh yeah.
commercialization strategies. It takes a while to understand that, and and I'm still trying to learn that. How and what is the
Mhm,
best way for everyone. We also wanted to make sure that as we build our product, we are not adding to the burden on neurologists. We want to
mhm,
make things easy for them,
mhm,
and so that information is at their fingertips. So these
mhm,
things are important. Also, what we realized was that there are certain dashboards that are best designed by neurologists, because those are the guys who consume it and who would be using those dashboards, rather than force a dashboard on them and then they say, that's not the way I see things or I want to consume things. So we are still working on that, and we are very glad that our advisory has come to us saying that, can I give you inputs in terms of how I would like to get the data, what type of information I need, and so that, I can see more patients in a given day. I want to address the burnout, some of the things that they see, and make it life easier for them, and at the same time help them improve I would say, the health outcomes at the same time. So it's not easy, and but it comes with a team, and with a great sense of humility. We look at inputs from people who are more knowledgeable in specific areas of in medicine, or in terms of how the clinical studies are done, and internal team members, external partnership ecosystems. All of them are very important for us
mhm,
from
mhm.
that perspective.
I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. That brings me to the end of my question. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you very much for your time, and it's just a privilege and an honor to speak with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much.